Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Welcome to another of these Sunday afternoon talks here at Amaravati during this Vasa period. So the theme for today's talk is the Buddha alive today? I thought this was an interesting theme to explore, and so I'll offer a few reflections on this, and hopefully there'll be a benefit, those who are gathered here and those who are listening in, watching from afar. Looking at this title, the first thing that came to mind was a statement made by Albert Einstein on an issue to do with the realm of physics. And when he was asked this particular question, a question not about the Buddha, but a question about the sort of fundamental physics of things, he said the answer is yes or no, depending upon the interpretation. So that might be helpful or not helpful, but I thought that's a good place to start. Depends what we mean. What do we mean by the word Buddha? And also alive, and so on. Well, considering this, and what do we mean by the word Buddha, then also what came to mind was a pair of principles they have in the Japanese tradition, and forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly, which is jiriki and tariki. Jiriki means self-power, or the internal power, and tariki means external or other power. I hope that's correct. Yes, I'm getting a nod from a Japanese representative here. So this is a way of speaking about two fundamental approaches towards spiritual practice, spiritual life, religious understanding. So tariki, the other power, or looking at religious structures in terms of the source of goodness, of strength, of power, of reality, as being something other, something elsewhere that then one calls upon. And so in many religions, the majority, I would say, of religious forms around the planet, this aspect is the most dominant one. So they are seen as being deities, or a single all-powerful omniscient deity, or angels, or saints, or bodhisattvas, avatars that are out there, that are called upon, that we sort of look to as being the source of goodness, the source of strength, the source of protection, and the source of reality. And the religious process, or the practices of devotion, or spiritual commitment, spiritual training, is attuning the heart, the mind, to those other powers, or that other power, that external quality, and inviting it to be present, trying to live in accordance with that principle, that quality that is out there, and praying to those deities, those gods, those saints, those bodhisattvas, avatars, protective beings, to help, to be a source of good fortune, a blessing, of the source of wholesome and good liberating qualities. And certainly my own upbringing in the Church of England Christianity, growing up in this country in England, that was very much the way that the kind of Christian forms were put across. You pray to Jesus, you pray to God, and that is the kind of So the model that one had growing up, at least in this country, Church of England Christianity in this country, as I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. But as we know, praying for or appealing to external forces to help or to provide or to bring benefit, to be, say, protective or supportive, to come and help out. Sometimes it seems to be effective and sometimes it doesn't seem to be effective. One of my earliest disappointments with religious life was, I think at the age of about 4 or 5, I grew up in quite a poor family, so we, as children, we only got presents on birthdays and Christmases. That was the only time we ever got presents. And I think a Christmas was coming up, and I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and so I was been going along to Sunday school, the local church Sunday school, and I think I'd sort of locked on to the idea or the statement from the Bible where it says, "Ask and it shall be given unto you." So I thought, well, that sounds good. So I want a fire engine for Christmas. And so I wanted a fire engine, not a full-size fire engine, just a small one that you could pedal as a 5-year-old. So I prayed vigorously for a fire engine, and I didn't get one. So that was one of my early disappointments with religion. I thought, well, he said, ask and it'll be given unto you. I'm not trying to make fun of Christianity. This was my own experience of like, well, I asked and I didn't get, so that's disappointing, and that's why was it like that, or why didn't I get what I was asking for? There's something going wrong here, or I'm missing something. I don't know the whole picture. I haven't got the whole story. Since I was only 4 or 5 years old, I probably wasn't doing too much abstract thinking at that time. Probably just thought, no, didn't get my fire engine. But still, there was a sense of having been told, oh, you can appeal to these invisible forces and they will help. And having appealed and the help or the thing that was wished for didn't appear, then the result was disappointment. So that looking to external forces to help, to support, to provide, that's very much a part of many religious forms. And even though within the Southern Buddhist world, there's nothing in the scriptures, and also in nothing amongst the forest tradition teachers that I know of, that I've been connected to, that would say, pray to the Buddha and the Buddha will help out. There is nothing in the scriptures that suggests that or promotes that in any way, shape, or form. But still, you find within Buddhist cultures, as much in the Southern Buddhist world as in the Northern Buddhist world, still people overlook the details of the texts and the sort of precise wording of the Pali Canon, and people will still pray to the Buddha to come and protect them, or to help out, or to help a family member to recover from an illness, or to help a failing business, or to protect a new house that is being built, or such like. So that it's not sort of backed up by the scriptures, but still there's a strong human urge. Like there are these invisible forces around in the world, in the universe, and hopefully they can lend a hand and help out. So that's very natural, very very ordinary, very very normal for us. And so that people would perhaps hope, the Buddha, the Buddha's still alive. The Buddha is still somewhere. The Buddha is this great, wise, powerful being. Is probably, possibly somewhere in some realm, and maybe the Buddha can help out with this in this particular situation. I feel it's. This way of forming things and putting the source of goodness and power and strength outside ourselves, and it's also strongly connected with what we call in Buddhism self-view, or in the Southern Buddhist tradition, the self-view or Sakkaya Ditthi, that seeing the Buddha in terms of a person, as this single separate being that was born and exists in the world and can be called upon, And so there is something in us that likes to keep those precious and dear beings around. Like, again, I'm not trying to make fun or belittle other spiritual traditions, but calling upon saints or calling upon deities or great figures, prophets who have been in the world, and sort of calling upon them to help out, to intercede, to be able to provide, say, protection and healing and such like. So it's a very strong say, impulse, but I do feel it's also based upon not wanting to, or not being able to see beyond things in personal terms. We kind of want to hold on to those that are near and dear to us, those who have inspired us, those who seem to be important. We want to say that the feeling they're still around, they can still help, they can, their presence is still there, and that we want to believe or hold on to the idea that we haven't lost them. They're still somewhere. They're still around and can lend a hand. And when I was reflecting on this theme, I was reminded of the poem that Percy Bysshe Shelley wrote about his friend John Keats. So, and John Keats died, I think, at the age of 27 from tuberculosis, and Shelley wrote this very long, sort of and beautiful poem about on the death of John Keats called Adonais, and part of it sort of revolves around this idea of, he hasn't really gone. He's really his body might have died, but really he's still with us. And if I can remember the words of one particular verse or some verses goes, "Peace, peace, he is not dead, he doth not sleep, he hath awakened from the dream of life. 'Tis we who lost in stormy visions with phantoms keep an unprofitable strife, and strike with our spirit's knife invulnerable nothings. We decay like corpses in a charnel. Pain and grief convulse us and consume us day by day, and cold hopes swarm like worms within our living clay. He is made one with nature, his voice is heard in all her music, from the moan of thunder to the song of night's sweet bird," and so on and so on. I don't know a lot more than that, but so peace, peace, he is not dead, he doth not sleep, he hath awakened from the dream of life. 'Tis we who lost in stormy visions keep with phantoms and in an unprofitable strife. So it's like, yes, his friend John Keats has died, but really he has become one with nature. His voice is heard in all the music of nature, the rumbling of thunder, the moan of thunder, the song of night birds, and so on. And so that it's very poetic, very beautiful, and so that and there might be an element of truth in it as well. But I feel that when we look upon great beings like the Buddha or the saints, the avatars, the great beings of the world, then we have this sense of, well, they're still there. They've become one with nature, or they're still around. We haven't lost them really. But that still hinges around the habits of self-view, me here, and then those beings out there that can help. And so that there's I feel a narrowness of view in that, and it's a way of holding things that isn't, I would say, particularly liberating. It still, in a way, puts us in a position of vulnerability, of separation, of incompleteness. And so that it's also that idea of being one with nature, and which is very common, being one with everything. That the Buddha pointed out, that's not a correct understanding. When a being is enlightened, to talk about them having sort of become one with the universe, the Buddha says, no, that's not correct to talk in that way. If you look at the first sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the root of all things, he says that he talks about that in that same way. He said that to say that one is one is they realize the all or become one with the all, ALL, with the all. That no, that's not quite accurate. It's not quite right. We think in those terms. We talk in those terms if we haven't really understand the truth of things. So again, that's still based around, I have become one with the all, or I'm going to be one with everything. And there's still these elements, these seeds of me here, the world out there, this sort of basic delusion of subject-object separation. So I feel all of these ways of speaking, are rooted in that, the habits of thinking in terms of self-view, of the solidity or the separateness of a person, even of a great person. And that also hinges around the whole languaging of things in terms of the other power or the source of goodness or reality out there is forming a basis of separateness. It's not saying that it can't be used as a helpful spiritual tool, but for myself, it never. Maybe because of the traumatic incident with not getting the fire engine at the age of 5, but as I thought about things or did more praying later on, and seemed to get no result or no contact, no sense of connection with anything. With any other kind of being or beings or that, they just said, this can't be the whole picture. So the other spiritual approach, that of jiriki, the inner power, when I started to come across these kind of what we might call mystical teachings, when I was in my teens and then growing up, and then particularly coming in contact with this in terms of Buddhist practice, then that made a lot more sense, that really it's that source of reality, the source of power, the source of truth is really within yourself. And it's there also in the Christian teachings, like Jesus saying, the kingdom of God is within you. So it's not as though these teachings are totally separate, but that wasn't something that was ever emphasized or didn't make sense or wasn't clarified when I was growing up. But coming in contact with Buddha Dhamma and then entering into monastic life and listening to the teachings of Luang Por Chah and the Pali scriptures, then that made a lot more sense. And there's a very nice way that Joseph Campbell, who's a great historian, philosopher, mythologist, put it in sort of relating these the sort of external gods and the ultimate reality to be known within. He said the ultimate nature of the God to which you refer is the ultimate reality of your own being. That to which the image of your God refers is the ultimate reality of your own being, and that is the being, the mystery of being of the world itself. That to which the image of your God refers is the mystery, the ultimate reality of your own being. And so I felt that phrases it very, very neatly, that we create images of a deity, a God, but it's all, in a way, that imagery is referring to the fundamental nature of your own being. And sometimes when people hear this kind of statement, it can seem to be very, very inflated. Like, you're saying that you are God or you're the Buddha, and it can seem like a kind of gigantic ego trip. But I feel that the whole, the process of development of wisdom or insight within Buddhist practice and the process of liberation, it hinges around, in a sense, recognizing that ultimate reality of our own being, but not letting conceit or egotism to take hold of that, but rather to see that ultimate, the fundamental nature of this being, this mind, this heart, is the same ultimate reality of the images of our deities and gods and saviors is referring to, but that doesn't have to be co-opted by an inflated ego or habits of conceit. But it is tricky to get a perspective on this when we say we let go of our imagery of an external deity or external sort of protective, helpful forces, or we say drop that kind of an idea, it can feel very barren or very lonely or very uncomfortable. Or like say in the Theravada world, in the teachings of our own Ajahns, Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mun, they would often point out when they would talk about Nibbana or the realization of Nibbana or the possibility of not being born again, many people they're talking to would be quite put off by that, like oh, I don't like the sound of that. I don't want to go to Nibbana. What about my family? Oh, I miss my friends. Or can I take my dog? You know, that there's a sense of, oh, I'll be in a state of lack or loss if I go to Nibbana. There's nothing there. And so people are put off by that. And so that because that lack of reference points, or that lack of otherness, if you like, then that seems to be a terrible loss. And I think, wow, it'd be incredibly lonely just to be me in Nibbana forever with nothing there. And so that gives people the chills. But I'd say that's a radical misunderstanding, a misreading of it, because it's in the process of the development of insight, there's a falling away of the usual reference points, the things that we are familiar with. There's necessarily a letting go of that. And so all our usual ways of framing who we are, what we are, and what is sort of good and beautiful in the world, those usual reference points fall away. Just like Luang Por Chah would ask that question, if you can't go forward and you can't go back, you can't stand still, where do you go? It's like, there's all your usual reference points fall away. For the heart to be genuinely liberated, there needs to be a letting go of identity, of self-view, of attachment to the self as an owner, as in terms of being, in terms of doing, in terms of choosing, letting go of your personal story, your personal history, your triumphs, your crises, your failures. All of that needs to be let go of. The mind needs to let go of time. It needs to let go of causality, cause and effect. It needs to let go of location, here and there, three-dimensional space and form, even space needs to be let go of. Form and formlessness, location, all of that needs to be dropped. So all of our usual reference points are gone. So it can seem like a terrible sort of nothingness or a terrible sense of loss. All the things that we take to be who and what we are, sort of beautiful and good and true and delightful. As the Buddha says in the scriptures, that there is that ayatana, that sphere of being, where there is no coming, no going, no standing still, no dying, no reappearance, no sun, no moon, no stars, no this world, no other world. There is no, it has no, it provides no support, it has no basis. And again, they can feel like, well, that sounds pretty lonely, pretty awful, pretty barren. But then he also says at the end of that teaching in the Udana, and this, I tell you, is the end of suffering. This is the end of dukkha. So all that, know this, know that, know this, know that, are the conditioned senses around what we take to be good and true and valuable, beautiful. It can seem like, well, what am I left with? What's there to be comforting or to be helpful, to be beautiful and good? But I would say that that sense of loss or challenge or threat or fear is coming from the conditioning of the mind based on self-view, on I am the body, I am the personality, this is my name, this is when I was born, this is my family history, this is my life and who and what I'm doing, taking those qualities to be absolutely true and real in the face of that attachment to self-view. Then no sun, no moon, no stars, no coming, no going, no standing still, no dying, no reappearance, no this world, no other world. It all seems like a terrible loss. But then why would the Buddha say this, I tell you, is the end of suffering? Or point to that as the way of indicating the ultimate reality, the fundamental reality of things, and how that is radically, completely liberating and freeing to the heart. And that also, when talking about this quality, so you're one who awakens to that quality and the realization of that quality, he also calls it unutterable bliss. When he's talking about Dabba Maliputta, when he passes away, he says this is the experience or the knowing of unutterable bliss, inexpressible bliss and delight. So it's mysterious, or it's challenging, because these familiar reference points of time, identity, location, even language, these familiar structures all are falling away. It can seem like there is nothing left. Well, who are we if we're not this? What's left? But what remains is the quality of awareness. In a way, it's a freeing of awareness, a freeing of the knowing heart, and that's the essence of this teaching. And when we ponder this question, is the Buddha alive today? Then this is sort of the essential element of that, I would say, is that when Luang Por Chah will be talking about this, he would say quite directly, the Buddha is alive. Not the Buddha as a person, as in Gautama Buddha, who was born in Lumbini and lived and taught and walked around India 2,500 years ago. But he would say, the Buddha is alive. The Buddha hasn't gone anywhere. And then, if you look in his teachings, say in the collected teachings, there's Luang Por Chah never had titles for his talks. We come up with titles for these Sunday talks, but Luang Por Chah, I don't think ever gave a talk with a title. People, us disciples of his, gave titles to his talks later on after he'd given them. So in the talk that's known as called No Abiding, and then another one called Dhamma Nature, if you look in the collected teachings of his, then he makes this kind of statement quite in a quite straightforward way. So the Buddha is still alive. The Buddha hasn't gone anywhere. And he would often quote the dialogue between the Buddha and Vakali, who was a disciple, a monk of the Buddha's community, as Vakali was passing away, and the Buddha heard that Vakali was very ill and couldn't leave his kuti. He was sort of dying of some kind of fatal illness. So the Buddha went to see Vakali in his kuti, in Isigili, and so Vakali was a bit distressed that he couldn't get up and pay respects to the Buddha because he was so weak. He couldn't get off his deathbed. And so the Buddha said, please don't distress yourself, just to stay where you are, please don't try to get up, don't try to bow to me. And then Vakali said, I'm so sorry, I've been so ill, I haven't been able to come and see you for a long, long time. And then the Buddha made this comment, there's no need to think that way, Vakali. One who sees me sees the Dhamma, one who sees the Dhamma sees me. And that was a very, very, common quotation that Luang Por Chah would refer to. So one who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha, one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. So when Luang Por Chah would make the comment, the Buddha is still alive, or the Buddha is still here today, it would be on the basis, the Buddha is the Dhamma. If you see the Buddha, you see the Dhamma. The Buddha is the Satya Dhamma, the true reality. So that Dhamma, that reality, hasn't gone anywhere. It's timeless. It's always here. It's ever present. So in that respect, the Buddha is the Dhamma. So the Dhamma hasn't gone anywhere. The Dhamma is always here. So in that respect, the Buddha is alive today. The Buddha is here, but not the person of the Buddha, that kind of external form of the Buddha, but this inner quality of wakeful awareness. In Thai language, when they're describing the qualities of the Buddha, Puru, Puda, and Pubak Ban, So puru literally means the one who knows. So that's often a term that's used to refer to the quality of awareness. And Luang Por Chah would stress that when we take refuge in the Buddha, Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, he would say, and I repeat this over and over, so those of you who've listened to my Dhamma talks, or when I'm doing the, giving the precepts Sunday morning or Saturday morning, when people come to visit, I'll often say that when we take refuge in the Buddha, Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, it doesn't mean just trusting the teachings of Gautama Buddha, who lived 2,500 years ago, or taking Gautama Buddha as our guide, as our spiritual mentor, as a being worthy of great reverence and respect, which he is. That person certainly, that great being is ultimately worthy of respect, reverence, and devotion. But as Luang Por Chah would point out, the Buddha, which is a refuge is a safe place. An idea of a being who lived 2,500 years ago, that idea is not a refuge. Or the image, like a bronze image up on a shrine, that's not a refuge. It's a statue. It can represent certain qualities, but in itself, that the idea of the Buddha, the memory of the Buddha, even the words of the Buddha, they're not a refuge in and of themselves, but rather what is a refuge is a safe place here and now. It's a genuine place of security. So Luang Por Chah would stress that the refuge, the Buddha refuge, is this very quality of awareness, this quality of knowing that is, say, accessible to us here and now. In the teachings, you have the way that the Buddha points to that himself, in that sort of not confusing that quality of awareness with the qualities of the person. And so I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the Lord Buddha and say that that by taking refuge in the Buddha, we're not looking to the historical being as that main source of security and blessing and protection, but rather, even in his own life, in his own words, the Buddha emphasized this, that don't mistake the qualities of the person with the actuality of that Buddha quality itself, that knowing, awakened awareness itself. And I often quote this dialogue of the Buddha with Vacchagotta. So Vacchagotta was a wanderer from a different group, a different sect that frequently came to see the Buddha, and would ask him various different philosophical questions. Eventually he became a disciple of the Buddha and became an arahant. So there's a whole sort of collection of Vacchagotta teachings which are quite delightful, wonderful in themselves. I think on a Sunday talk a couple of years ago we had them. The questions of Vacchagotta was a whole theme for a Sunday talk. Be somewhere in the records. But anyway, so in this particular dialogue, it's called Vacchagotta and Fire. And so Vacchagotta has come to the Buddha and has asked him, what happens to an enlightened being at the end of their life, at the death of the body? Where does an enlightened being go? And then he says, do they reappear in a different realm? And the Buddha says, Vaccha, reappear does not apply. He said, well, do they not reappear in another realm? And the Buddha says, does not reappear. That doesn't apply either. And then to sort of complete the whole picture, he said, well, do they both reappear and not reappear? The Buddha said, that doesn't apply either. And then the last one of the set is, well, do they neither reappear in another realm, nor do they not reappear in another realm? And the Buddha said, that doesn't apply either. So Vacchagotta is confused, and he said, well, one of these has got to be true, one of these has got to apply. This covers every possible angle: reappearing, not reappearing, both reappearing and not reappearing, neither reappearing nor not reappearing. So that's got to be, say, the representing the reality somehow. And the Buddha said, no, you're asking the question in a way that presumes a reality that doesn't exist. So he said, so Vajja, if we had a little fire burning here made of grass and sticks burning away, and then we let the fire go out, and I asked you the question, where did the fire go, north, south, east, or west? What would you reply? And then he would say, he replied, well, I would say that the way the question is put implies a reality that doesn't exist. The fire didn't go north, south, east, or west. It just went out. And the Buddha said, exactly. The way you put the question presumes a reality that doesn't exist. So reappears doesn't apply, does not reappear doesn't apply, and so forth. So, and it takes a bit of reflection and contemplation to understand what the Buddha's pointing to here, but I feel it's one of the most profound and helpful teachings in the Pali Canon, so I repeat it regularly for my own reflection as well as for other people. I even have it sort of pinned up on the wall in my kuti. So he said, so Vajjagota, so Vajja, that material form which one trying to describe the Tathagata would describe him. So that body or that material form by which one trying to describe the Tathagata would describe him, like saying the Tathagata is tall, or he's good looking, or he is say he used to be a soldier, that material form, that feeling, that Vedana, that perception, that sanya, those mental formations, that consciousness whereby one trying to describe the Tathagata would describe them, that has been cut off at the root, made like a palm tree stump, deprived of the conditions for existence, and rendered incapable of arising in the future. The Tathagata is liberated from being reckoned in terms of form, in terms of the body, in terms of feeling, in terms of perception, in terms of mental formations, in terms of consciousness. So the usual reference points that you would talk about a person, that they are Indian, or they're English, or they're Thai, or they're French or German, they're tall, they're short, they're dark, they're light. They are awake, they are asleep, they are healthy, they are sick. I know them, I don't know them. All these usual reference points, none of those apply. So they're cut off at the root, made like a palm tree stump, deprived of the conditions for existence, and rendered incapable of arising in the future. So all the usual reference points we have for talking about each other, old, young, tall, short, female, male, I know them, I don't know them, none of that applies. All that's been cut off at the root and so forth. The Tathagata is liberated from being reckoned in those terms. He is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. So in that expression, the Tathagata, there is a quality there. That there is this quality, the Tathagata, which literally means the one thus come, thus gone, come to suchness, gone to suchness. That there is a quality there. That there's a reality to that quality of Tathagata, which is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. But you can't reckon that, you can't measure that, you can't describe that, you can't imagine that using the familiar reference points of the five khandhas, or like I was saying earlier, in terms of time or identity, in terms of location, space, form or formlessness, cause and effect. None of that applies. But there is this quality of the Tathagata. So in terms of this question, is the Buddha alive today? And how that can be a useful question to us, and why I thought this is an interesting and valuable topic, is pointing to that quality of awakened awareness. The Buddha uses the word Tathagata to refer to himself. I would say another way of referring to that is the element of awareness, the vijja dhatu, or the element of knowing, the element of awareness. That is what is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. It's present, like right now. There's a knowing of this moment, whether it's me looking at the microphone and the camera and the temple from this Dhamma seat, or the people sitting here in the temple, or the people watching this on your various screens, on your phone or your computer or whatever. There is this quality of knowing. And that knowing, it knows the body, it knows feelings and perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, it knows the inner world, the outer world, but that knowing has no personal qualities. It's not female or male, it's not old or young, it's not healthy or sick, it doesn't have an age or even a location. It's not anywhere. It doesn't have a shape, or nor is it shapeless. Shape doesn't apply, place doesn't apply, time doesn't apply, causality doesn't apply, language doesn't even apply. Makes it even more tricky to talk about. But all those usual reference points have fallen away or don't apply, but there is this awake, aware quality that knows. And that when we talk about the Buddha refuge, or when we say Buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi, I go to the Buddha for refuge, it's drawing upon that awake, aware quality, letting that be the ground of experience. That taking refuge in that quality is being that awake, aware quality, being that knowing, without that then becoming a person, without that being a me, a monk who's aware, or a man who's aware, or an English person who's aware, or a Ajahn Amaro who's aware, but rather there is awareness that knows the qualities of the world this Sunday afternoon here in Amaravati, or that knows the feelings of coolness or warmth, and colours and shapes and forms and sounds. It knows those aspects of the world, it knows the aspects of this being, the sensations of my legs, or my hands, my face, my shoulders. It knows sensations, it knows perceptions, it knows moods and thoughts and ideas. It knows the personal qualities, but that which knows the person isn't a person. It's not male or female, it's not old or young, it's not tall or short, it doesn't have a nationality or an age. It's unimaginable. The mind can't create an image, but it is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. So there's an isness, a suchness, but even using words like isness or suchness, in a way putting too much form into the mix, but they indicate that that quality has a presence, has a reality. There's a dimension of being that is, say, of a different order than the ordinary everyday being of being a man, being a woman, being old, being young, being English, being French, being Thai or German or Chinese or Indian. And in the Pali language, there are two verbs to be. There is hoti, which is the being of, say, today is Sunday, or I am Ajahn Amaro, that being in time and being in the realm of cause and effect and duality of here and there, subject and object. And the other verb to be is ati. And so when the Buddha makes those statements like there is the unborn, the unoriginated, the uncreated, the unformed, if there was not the unborn, the unoriginated, the uncreated, the unformed, then no liberation from the born, the created, the originated, the formed will be possible. But because there is the unborn, the unoriginated, the uncreated, the unformed, therefore liberation is possible from the born, the originated, the formed, etc. So in those teachings, or there is that ayatana, that sphere of being, whereas there is neither dying nor reappearance, there is no sun, no moon, no stars. The isness that is, say, referred to in relationship to those qualities, the Buddha uses the verb ati. So that's a quality of being that implies a transcendent and a being outside of the realm of time and individuality and causality. That's maybe a little bit challenging to get one's head around, but I do feel it's a helpful distinction to make, that there are different kinds of being, the being in time and the being which is timeless. And so that even though that might be hard to imagine or hard to get a genuine feeling for, that is the that's the pathway to liberation. That's the door to liberation. To recognize that quality of timeless knowing, that tatata, that tathagata, that which has gone to suchness, come to suchness. That is a quality of being that is accessible to us. And when we say Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, going for refuge to the Buddha, it's choosing to be awake, choosing to be aware, choosing to say embody that awakened knowing quality, the vijja dhatu. Another of Luang Por Chah's helpful statements, and which kind of refers to, well, how do we develop that? How do we go for refuge? How do we cultivate that, taking refuge or embodying that quality of awareness? How can that be developed? How can that be sustained? How can that be sort of that refuge genuinely be taken? And in another of his teachings, the one I think it was called Still Flowing Water, again in his collected teachings, he makes this very cryptic statement where he says, uncertainty is the Buddha. And like the Buddha himself, Luang Por Chah was very skilled at making sort of attention-grabbing comments that, what does he mean by that? That uncertainty is the Buddha. So you think, well, hang on a minute, the Buddha is about truth and certainty and reality. But he made this comment, uncertainty is the Buddha, quam mainer, the uncertainty, or the truth of anicca, impermanence, uncertainty. He said, uncertainty is the Buddha because if one sees the Buddha, one sees the Dhamma. If one sees the Dhamma, one sees the Buddha. So the Buddha is the Dhamma. Again, using that same principle, the Dhamma is the unwavering truth of that all things are uncertain. Yeah, that's the fundamental nature of all things. Sabbe sankhara anicca. All things are uncertain. They're in a state of change. Sabbe sankhara anicca. Because everything is anicca, it's uncertain what they're going to change into. Everything is in a state of change. What they will change into is not a sure thing. So all things are uncertain. So in this respect, he said, uncertainty is the Buddha. So the mind that knows that all things are uncertain is that Buddha mind, that awake, aware mind that sees that the world of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, it's in a constant state of change, and it's not known what it'll change into. All things are necessarily uncertain. And the heart that knows that, the mind that genuinely knows that quality of uncertainty, that fluidity, that transiency, and is attuned to that uncertainty, that is the awake, aware mind. So that it knows uncertainty, it knows that quality of unreliability in the world of forms and perceptions. So it's not relying on any particular object, any sight or sound or smell or taste or touch or thought or any aspect of the body or the material world, because it knows that these things are unreliable. They're in a state of change. They're not a refuge. So I feel that's a very helpful sort of entry point, how to develop the Buddha refuge. If the Buddha is alive, that quality of awake and aware knowing is alive. Why that's important and why that's valuable is that it provides this quality of security and a quality of great freedom. Because when the heart embodies that quality of awareness and lets go of reliance upon seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, then regardless of what the world does in terms of comfort or discomfort or things being what you expect or what you don't expect, the heart is supremely adaptable because it's not relying upon particular feelings or perceptions or particular outcomes. Whatever the world does, the heart is not shaken or confused or limited or burdened or stressed by whatever happens in terms of the experiential field. So again, using Luang Por Chah as an example, when I was living in Thailand, somebody once made the comment about him, said, I really think a bomb could go off in the sala, and Ajahn Chah wouldn't disturb him in the slightest. He's really that sort of clear and unshakable. Even if a bomb went off, he would know, he would be aware of that, but it wouldn't confuse or upset or disturb him. So that reflection upon uncertainty and say using that as a principle to train our hearts to guide us, it's a way of examining all the things that we tend to take to be certain, like our possessions, or our routine, or the people around us, or our health, or the weather, or the political situation, or the food supply, or people's emotions, and our relationships with our family, and things that we take for granted, things that we are unconsciously invested in. It was like this today, so it'll be like that tomorrow. It's not a sure thing. So that recollection of uncertainty, cultivating that mind that knows uncertainty, it's often challenging to the ego. It's to the habits of self-view. It can be threatening. It's like, don't say that. Even using those words, like we take for granted our health or our possessions or our relationships, and we can hear those words and think we're tempting fate, or we're gonna spook things by say looking at the possibilities of things being fragile or unstable or uncertain. But it's always been that way. It's not a surprise. The body's nature is extremely fragile and delicate. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to be. I'm presuming that the video connection and the power supply will keep going. It's now 2:51, 55 seconds. That the power will keep going until this teaching is finished, and we had the time for the questions by 3:30. But I don't know. Suddenly the power can go off and the whole thing can go kaput, and then the Sunday afternoon talk is over. It can happen in a second. We don't know. So cultivating the perception of uncertainty, the anicca sanya, it's threatening to the ego, but simultaneously it's liberating to the heart. That which is that in us which says, don't say that, or don't talk about your health failing or things breaking down. Like don't spook things in that way. Don't tempt fate. That's coming very much from the habits of self-view, of trying to take refuge in this person and having things predictable and as we know them. But the heart, the natural wisdom of the heart knows, well, of course it's uncertain, of course it's unstable. It never has been predictable or secure. That's the way things have always been, and that's how they always will be. That's the nature of the world. So that it's simultaneously threatening to the ego and the habits of self-view, but freeing to the heart, freeing and liberating that in us which recognizes, of course, and then say letting go of the habit of trying to find security in that which is insecure, trying to find predictability in that which is unpredictable, trying to find stability in that which is unstable, sort of letting go of that anxious, fretful hope, and we feel relief. There's a spaciousness and ease that we find. So again, Luang Por Chah would encourage these very simple practices of whenever the mind makes a judgment, this is good, that's bad, or tomorrow I'm going to be doing this, or we've got a meeting scheduled to do that. And so I'm going to be seeing this person or that person, just to ask yourself the question, is that so? Or when we make judgments about each other, this person is unhappy or this person is happy, is that so? When people say, how are you? Say, well, I'm very well. Is that so? So cultivating that perception of anicca in a mysterious way, that's what strengthens the refuge in the Buddha. If the Buddha is the Buddha, as in the quality of awareness that is alive and accessible today, the access to that the Buddha within, that Buddha knowing, is through the gateway of uncertainty. As Luang Por Chah would call it, the pathway of the noble ones, the attitude of the noble ones. It's a strange chemistry, but by remembering it's not a sure thing, it's uncertain. Then that brings the heart in tune with that awake, aware quality. It drops its habitual attachments to self-view and the compulsive taking refuge in our routines, our objects, our body, our mind states, and so on and so forth. So just to bring to mind that question, is that so? If you make this as a deliberate practice, say, okay, every time my mind makes a judgment during today, I'll ask the question, is that so? If you set that in place as an intention at the beginning of a day, it can be really startling how many judgments the mind makes during the course of a day. I haven't actually sort of counted them one by one, but when many years ago, Luang Por Sumedho was talking about this and sort of suggesting this as a practice, and so I tried it out. And it's really a real eye-opener. It's like, wow, I guess hundreds of times during the course of a day, the mind says, I like this, I don't like that, this is good, that's bad, this person is this way, this person is that way, I'm this way, I'm that way. It's astonishing how repeatedly the mind makes these judgments and then believes in the judgments that it makes. We assume, because we think something and we make a judgment, this is good, that's bad, this is beautiful, that's ugly, this is delicious, this is awful, then we take those to be true. So just by getting a perspective on how many judgments the mind makes, asking that kind of a question, is that so? Is that a sure thing? Is that the whole story? Then each time there's a spaciousness, there's an opening up, there's an unburdening that we experience. And the other practice I like to encourage is even simpler than asking, is that so? It's a bit more blunt, but again, this was one of Luang Por Chah's encouragements. It would just be to think the word so. This is great. So this is awful. So yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. So this is exactly what I didn't want. So I don't know what I'm going to do today. So I know exactly what I'm going to do today. So it's a kind of automatic deflator. It pulls the plug on our plans or our ideas or our enthusiasms and also our anxieties and aversions. It repeatedly, continually puts them in perspective. And whereas the assumption of our patterns of thinking is it's a good thing, or therefore this is something I can do, or something I need to get away from. Just by reflecting so, it dissolves the habits of self-view around liking and disliking, about and taking action and attitudes, all of that. And it's a sort of practice. You only get a real sense for how it works if you apply it, taking it seriously, putting it into practice, and then you realize, oh, this is genuinely taking refuge in awareness, being awake, being aware. There's in that moment of saying so, or is that so, then there's a clarification that the things that distort or confuse that quality of awareness, they fall away, even if it's just for a moment. They fall away, and that awake, aware quality is unobstructed. the heart knows, oh right, of course, it's no big thing, or what makes that special, or yeah, that's not a sure thing, it couldn't be a sure thing. And that is the peace of the mind, free of clinging, free of identification, free of those habits of self and other. It's a heart that is free of grasping. So in terms of the theme today, is the Buddha alive today? Then rather than sort of looking to the Buddha as some kind of invisible deity that can provide protection, so praying to the, please Buddha, protect me, which one would say from a very, I would say, materialistic or an attitude based on self-view, that the Buddha is somehow this invisible being out there who might offer protection, rather than please Buddha, protect me. It's much more be awake now. Be awake, be aware, and trust in that awareness. That's where the real protection comes from, because if the heart genuinely embodies that quality of awakened awareness, then nothing can go wrong. You're healthy or you're sick. You live or you die. You're praised or you're criticized. Things go as you wish or they don't go as you wish. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. Nothing can be lost. Nothing can be harmed. There is a fundamental refuge is established. So I offer these thoughts today for reflection. So a couple of questions were sent in today for this this session. Dear Ajahn Amaro, first of all, thank you so much for sharing the gift of Dhamma, etc., etc. My question is hopefully somewhat related to the topic of this week's Sunday talk, and is about the relationship between the Dhamma and the findings of modern evolutionary science and psychology. In the past few years, I've noticed there's a school of thought emerging. Robert Wright's Why Buddhism is True book is a prime example, that connects dukkha to the feeling of near-permanent biological dissatisfaction, which serves as an impulse to consume and procreate, and the doctrine of no self to the evolutionary modular, quote-unquote, theory of the mind. It also highlights the limitations of the human senses in accessing the true nature of reality, pointing out that our understanding of the world is just a function of our sensual intellectual apparatus, which in turn was developed purely as a survival tool and therefore has a number of evolutionary biases built into it. I'm wondering what you make of these efforts to connect the theory of evolution and modern science more broadly and the Buddha's teachings. Do you think these types of insights can be helpful on the path to liberation? Thank you in advance. I wish you great health and happiness. So coincidentally, I'm quite fond of Robert Wright's writings. He did a book a number of years ago called The Moral Animal, and that was my introduction to evolutionary psychology. I felt it was very insightful, very, very helpful, and pointing out how many of our human activities and attitudes and forms of relationship in the human realm are really just sort of the evolutionary overspill of functioning as a sort of tribal animal, living like a group of baboons or chimpanzees or tribal creatures of that nature, and that appreciating that perspective. I know there's various issues around evolutionary psychology, and it has been somewhat co-opted by various people who have got some pretty sort of unskillful, unwholesome attitudes, and sort of uncompassionate and divisive. But in general, when reading, say, The Moral Animal, and then also I was listening to a talk of Robert Wright's a year or so ago, I do feel that it's valuable, and it gives us a perspective on the human condition, our human relationships, and seeing them in a context of a natural order, how we we sort of function in relationship to each other, and that a lot of what drives us are those sort of primal urges to find food, to protect our resources, to say bond together with the other members of our troop, our tribe, and to protect them, to keep dangerous forces away, to procreate the species. These are sort of biological imperatives, forces in the sort of living world, and that the more that they are able to be appreciated as well, this is just they say the karmic result of our human birth and our ancestry. Then we see them, we take them all in a much less personal way. So, as Lumpur Sumedho would put it, don't take your life personally. So when we see that our loves, our hates, our sort of protective urges, our ambitious urges, our competitive urges, our relationship to food or to sexual desire or to competition and so forth, these are just in a way the resonances of our animal ancestry. It helps the mind to see it far more in terms of nature. We see the impulses of our mind, our conditioning, far more as a collection of patterns in the natural order, rather than taking it personally. Like, I've got a problem with greed, or I've got a problem with possessiveness, or I'm really competitive, and all those I ams, and I don't want to be competing with the other monks, or why should I be the best monk, and or resenting somebody else who's more competent than me at this and that. I don't want to be that way. But just seeing how those urges towards competition or towards sort of protectiveness, how our monastery is more important than somebody else's monastery because this is our tribe, our group, our troop, not like that other lot. But these those powerful urges and perceptions are just conditioned aspects of the natural order. We don't have to take them personally. You don't have to see there's liking and disliking, protectiveness, competition, jealousy, say, or even the sense of say belonging to a particular place, or how particular things we call good. Seeing how this is a conditioning of our animal ancestry, and we don't have to take it personally. And when we change from a self-centered perspective to a nature-centered perspective, then exactly as I was saying in this talk, we're letting go of self-view. We're not seeing life and our mind and our field of experience just in terms of self-view. We're not taking it personally, but rather, this is the feeling of anger, or this is the feeling of belonging, or this is the feeling of jealousy, or this is the feeling of delight. This is the feeling of loving a friend. This is a feeling of heartbreak when a friend dies. It's recognizing this is the flow of our field of experience of functioning according to natural laws. So things are still sweet and bitter, but the heart isn't taking them personally, and so there's a way that it can all be known and appreciated, can be attuned to and learned from, but without any of it being limiting or burdensome. So I feel that a number of the insights coming from evolutionary psychology in particular, and then also the other part of it was, the limitations of the human senses in accessing the true nature of reality, pointing out that our understanding of the world is just a function of our sensual intellectual apparatus. Not only do I agree with that, I just wrote a book about that called The Mind is What Matters, about exactly that, the sort of phenomenological approach of the Buddha, saying the world that we experience is not the world, it's this mind's representation of the world. Like, the world that I see is not the world, it's just this mind's way of putting together an image of the world. So we feel like, I'm experiencing the world as it is, but none of us do. According to our education, our family conditioning, our siblings, the events that have happened in our life, the language that we speak, all of that has its effect, so that the mind puts together this particular perception of the world. Just like I'm sitting here up in the Dhamma seat, everyone here in the temple is sitting in a different spot. So we're all experiencing a different temple, simply according to the different spots that we're sitting in around the temple. Those of you who are listening in, watching this from a distance, you're in your own homes, or on your bus, or you're sitting on a train, or in a park somewhere, and your experience of the world is put together from where you are and how you're experiencing things, conditioned by the choices that you've made to be where you are in this moment. So each one of us doesn't experience the world. Each one of us experiences the mind's representation of the world. So when that's appreciated, and one of the reasons I feel this is very important and helpful, it sort of lowers the level of conceit. It's just because I experience it, it doesn't mean it's the whole story. Or that when it's things are realized to be of that nature, then it's like, well, why should my mind be representing the world in a more accurate or more real way than your mind? Just because my mind says this is beautiful and your mind says that this is ugly, why should my mind's interpretation be the correct one? So that when this phenomenological approach is taken, one of the results is a lot more compassion. A lot more appreciation that your point of view can only be one perspective, and that you find a lot more of compassion for other people's experience of the world. If you're with someone who is easily, they take everything as a threat, and they're feeling very anxious, then you can say to them, well, there's nothing to worry about. But then from their side, yes, there is. There's a lot to worry about, because their mind is prone to seeing things from a perspective of things that are dangerous and difficult. So just because my mind might say there's nothing to worry about, why should that be the whole story? Why should that be the defining take on the reality? But instead, when we see, well, my mind says there's nothing to worry about, but this other good person, his mind is saying there's a lot to worry about. This is really, really concerning. And so then there's an empathy, a compassion that you're able to genuinely appreciate the point of view, the experience of others, not in a condescending, patronizing way, but in a genuine, heartfelt, empathetic way. So I feel that these perspectives are very, very helpful, very beneficial if they're held in a skillful fashion. Again, I've heard that there has been some sort of interpretations of evolutionary psychology and ways of sort of creating harmful attitudes, destructive and divisive attitudes. So it's not something that's intrinsically perfect and good in and of itself, but if it's used in a skillful way and understood in the context of Dhamma, I would say, then it can be very, very helpful, very illuminating. Second question was, is the Buddha, as the one who knows, only alive as a function of the degree of awareness someone has at any given moment? So, the Buddha is alive on a hypothetical spectrum from not alive, no awareness, to completely alive, full awareness. I hope that question makes sense. Yeah, very much so. That's a good question. I didn't actually think of this angle, so congratulations on coming up with something that hadn't crossed my mind. It's a... I would say the Buddha is alive, as in that awareness is alive, insofar as if the mind is filled with its opinions and views and is not drawing upon that, then that Buddha quality is inaccessible, and so effectively it's not present, or is not alive as a sort of an informing presence in the mind. So I would say that's this is one way of looking at that issue. I would say that that awareness that is always here. It's a fundamental quality of mind, but it can be masked, it can be covered, it can be overlaid by the habits of thinking and perception conditioning, so that that potential for knowing, for awareness, is something that's ever present within us, and so it can be drawn upon. I would say it's alive, but it might be alive but inaccessible. It's there as a potential, but if it's out of reach, if it's buried under layers and layers of opinions and habits and fears and desires and preoccupations with sort of personal preferences and such like. Do we have any questions here in the temple? There's one or two microphones around, so I'm happy to answer one or two if there's any further interest, things to ask. Very good. Okay, we can call it to a close there today. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that what's been said today is a benefit, and I'll be disappearing for a solo retreat time after next weekend, so I won't be around from the 6th until the 27th, but I trust that Amaravati will carry on. Of course, it's not a sure thing, but I hope that Amaravati will carry on even after I've disappeared into seclusion from the 6th. But next weekend I have a weekend retreat I'm leading over at the retreat center. This weekend I'm part of a Thai language retreat. So I just stepped out of that for an hour and a half now, but next weekend I have a weekend retreat I'm leading there, but then after that I should be disappearing for 3 weeks. So I trust that you will be able to make good use of the teachings, and that Amaravati will carry on in a cohesive and beneficial way.